you can control through a fascist state, the democratic struggle of people towards socialism. Next, we'll move on with the question of what the update on what's going on in Syria. We have Johnny Achi from Arab-American Syria, a regular guest on Freedom Now, and he gives us another point of view, a critical point of view, especially since we're reading in the media today that, in fact, the United States is going to up its involvement in the crisis in Syria. Johnny, welcome to Freedom Now.
Hello, Dylan. Thanks for having me again on the show.
Can you give our audience an update of what's been going on? The struggle in Hamas with Israel has kind of dominated the media, yet the war continues in Syria. The mercenary rebel war in Syria still continues.
Okay, actually, the events that are taking place so rapidly today in the Middle East, if they prove anything, they prove all along what we've been saying here on your show. You touched on the Gaza war. If we can touch real quick on that, the Gaza war, it was not just a coincidence. Obviously, the godfathers of the so-called Arab Springs, Bernard Henry Levy, has said all along that the Arab Springs will not touch Israel's national security, and the ruler of Qatar, the other godfathers, happened to visit Gaza, who's never made a visit to Gaza, a day or 2 days, I think, before the Israeli assassination of Ahmad Jabari. His visit was supposed to be 2 days in Gaza. It ended in about maybe 6 hours at the most. And like I said, a day or 2 days later, Ahmad Jabari, the head of the military wing of Hamas, was assassinated and set off those 8 days, mini war, what we call it, or, a war. The idea is what they've achieved in this war is a lot. Helping with so-called Arab Springs. First of all, 2008, Israel did the same thing right after the U.S. election and just before the Israeli election. They tried to do the same thing. That didn't work then, and it sure didn't work this time. I think they underestimated the range of the missiles that Gaza had. But the idea is if Hamas was going to sit on the table, part of this new Islamist or a new Muslim Brotherhood regimes in the Middle East that the United States trying to, export to us or trying to place in place for us. We saw in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Libya, the Muslim Brotherhoods took over, and of course who are fighting today in Syria are also Muslim Brotherhoods. But it seems the deal that the United States and NATO has made with Muslim Brotherhoods, we get you control of your countries, you do whatever you want there, regardless if you would give freedoms to your people, women and minorities or not. What we want is to protect our interests in the region and obviously the national security of Israel. Hamas has made that deal, but Hamas becomes Hamasis today, many Hamasis. Today, Khalid Mash'al has left Syria and went to live in Qatar and a palace there, and he seems to have sold. However, Ahmad al-Jabari, obviously the military wing of Hamas, did not agree to that, so he was taken out. And today, Morsi, the president of Egypt, was given that role as the savior of Israel, where we see that he was able to broker that deal, control the borders with Hamas, that there were no more missiles will be sent or smuggled into Hamas, and they're going to take Hamas into the negotiation table, something that had proved to be fruitless for the Palestinians. After 20 years of negotiating with Israel, they got nothing except more settlers on their land, more land taken from them. Obviously, the move with the Palestinians 2 days ago in the UN was considered somehow a moral victory. However, who are the 9 nations that voted against? From 193 nations, only 9 nations voted against that Palestinian. Obviously, 4 Pacific Islanders, small, tiny nations, they always voted Israel. And the other were United States, Canada, Israel, obviously the Czech Republic, and Panama. So you can't convince me out of 193 states, United States would not want to see a non-member state given to Palestine after 68 some years of occupation. That just to show that the new Muslim Brotherhood are willing to do anything just to stay in power. Now, seeing what's happening today in Egypt, the people in Tahrir squares, hundreds of thousands, are saying, we do not want that. You might, think this is good for us. No, this is not good for us. You see today Tahrir square, all the liberal people, the Christians, the women are back on the square saying they're counter-revolutionary, counter-revolutionary to what had happened and putting Morsi in power. And I think the Muslim Brotherhood is showing, even in Tunisia, are not going to last. And sure enough, in Syria, they are fighting hard to not let the extremists take power in Syria. And now we move on to Syria. It seems like across Syria these days, one is able to examine the massive evidence that this ancient civilization, this historic bastion of national Arabism, an essential pillar of the growing culture of resistance against the Zionist occupation of Palestine, is becoming awash with foreign arms, funded to the insurgents by countries obviously advocating the regime change led by the U.S. and NATO. So today, Damascus and Aleppo are facing tremendous attacks. In the last 3 days, the Damascus has been attacked from various areas. The foreign fighters are trying to enter. There's hundreds of foreign fighters who have been, killed. And Bashar al-Jafari, our UN representative to the United Nations, a Syrian ambassador, had give the names of 149 names and identity of foreign fighters who have fallen in Syria. The bulk of them don't carry identity cards, so you can't tell who they are. However, these 143 have identity from 19 different nations. And we as Syrians are today asking the UN to declare the presence of foreign nationals in Syria to be an international terrorism. We need to get this word out. Thousands of foreign fighters are fighting today, belonging to Jabhat al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda, trying to take out this black secularist country regime in Syria.
It seems that started from Afghanistan and continuing, there's this cadre of so-called mujahideen that are being moved all over the world to destabilize governments. I know they came into being as part of the United States' effort to destabilize the revolution that occurred in Afghanistan, and they was worried about the Soviet influence because the first thing the revolution in Afghanistan was establish diplomatic relations with the USSR. That's when the United States began financing this mujahideen. But these same set of international so-called Islamic fundamentalists are now being moved all over the world whenever there's a need to destabilize a government. It seems that's occurring now in Syria.
I'm glad you mentioned the word Afghanistan, because what we people in Syria today, we call the northern part of Syria, or the southern part of Turkey, we call it the new Afghanistan, given the metrics of jihadists, Salafists, Wahhabists, the arriving of foreign who would be Mujahideen and Al-Qaeda affiliates. I do want to mention that according to a report by the Times of London, a vessel flying Libyan flag named Al-Intisar, loaded with more than 400 tons of cargo, landed in southern Turkey, which is about 30 miles from the Syrian northern border. While it might have had some little humanitarians, the staff of the UN envoy Brahimi, during the recent trip to Syria, have declared that Al-Intisar, this ship, carried largest consignment of foreign weapons to date, including surface-to-air anti-aircraft missiles, RPGs, and man-portable air defense systems that might be supplied by the United States. If you remember the visit of Clinton at the end of the fall of the Jamahiriya and the killing of Muammar Gaddafi, she went and she gave $40 million, I think, to collect all these weapons. Now, everyone knows that these weapons are in Syria. Most of that weapons that was collected from Libya is today in Syria. Now, I do also want to mention something very, very important that you and I have been talking about here on the show, is the minorities in Syria. Mm-hmm. When we used to say, there might be the next genocide might be against the minorities, that the minorities will be slaughtered if these people put force in Libya, there's really no minorities. In Syria, it's a composition of maybe 20 different ethnicities and different sects. A recent meeting hosted by United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, Peter Galbraith, who was a former American ambassador, I think, to the former Yugoslavia, who witnessed the ethnic cleansing in the former Yugoslavia, made a chilling prediction that the next genocide in the world, he said, will likely be against the minorities in Syria. A few months ago, I mentioned that on your show, and I talked of possible massacres. And massacres, what happens of minorities who are in Syria? Yes, they are heavily pro-government in Syria. That seemed like it was a pro-regime propaganda, but today it's obviously not, and it's a real possibility that this will happen. So the Syrians today in Syria are doing all they can to fight off that attack. If we have a couple more minutes, I do want to do a shout-out to people in Syria who probably are listening to us tonight.
Go ahead. Go ahead, brother.
I appreciate that. Thank you. The last couple of days, the attack on Damascus, the insurgencies were coming in thousands. They were very powerful. First of all, 2 days ago, a fifth suicide bomb hit the same small town of Jaramana in Damascus. I want to do a shout-out to the people of Jaramana who shows amazing courage. A fifth suicide bomb, and they're only they're guilty of one thing, maybe, that they have this cultural mosaic composition in that little city. It has all type of different sects who live in amazing coexistence, and they have been showing solidarity with the government, and they paid the price for the fifth time. 54 men and women died when two suicide bombers took one after the other and took out those lives. So also, on the last 2 days, they were able to cut off the internet out of all of Syria. As you understand, there is a campaign against the media in Syria. All our TV satellite stations have been taken out of the satellite as part of the sanctions in Syria, so we cannot see what is going on there. The lines, somehow the internet lines were cut off for 2 days. So somehow on Facebook, and Syrians who live outside of Syria started a campaign of something called "From Whoever We Are, Here's Damascus." And the story of this goes back to 1956 during the apartheid aggression against Egypt. If you remember, the French fighter jet attacked at the time Egyptian radio station and stopped broadcasting. And that in time of war, broadcasting is very important. So it stopped us from broadcasting the program, which caused the start of the phrase, which the broadcast used to start with the phrase, "Here's Cairo." At that time, the Stern Radio back then, and as an expression of solidarity with Egypt, started its program with the phrase, "From Damascus, here is Cairo." So for the last 2 days, Syrians around the world and friends of Syrians around the world, they were saying, from whoever they were, Paris, Sydney, Los Angeles, here's Damascus. And I would like to say here from California, from Los Angeles, here's Damascus, in solidarity with the people of Damascus, who are showing tremendous courage and tremendous sacrifices to stop against the dark forces of Takfiris and Wahhabis and Muslim extremism. I would tell them that you will not be defeated, and you believe in a united Syria and a secular Syria and a continuously free Syria from those dark forces.
Well, we just heard from Mr. Achi from the Arab Americans for Syria. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dina.